Hey, Cindy Hannah, this is Miss Owens, one of your assistant principals, and I'm here this afternoon to share with you some information from a class I'm taking at Jacksonville State University titled Law and Ethics with Dr. William Kaiser. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to get started with a presentation. If you'll give me 1 second. The title of the presentation is Legal and Ethical Issues in Education. And I did work on this with two other ladies, and their names are Brandy Caldwell and Emily Nash. And you can see their contact information on slide 2. Topics to be addressed in today's presentation are the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics, due process, religion, freedom of expression, search and seizure, individuals with disabilities, and liability in student records. We'll start with the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics. And basically, this is a list of 9 standards that educators are expected to abide by in order to demonstrate morally and ethically correct behavior. Standard 1 addresses professional conduct, 2, trustworthiness, 3, unlawful acts, 4, teacher and student relationships, 5, alcohol, drug, and tobacco use or possession, 6, public funds and property, 7, remunerative conduct, 8, maintenance of confidentiality, and 9, abandonment of contract. The next topic is due process. All students have the right to due process as part of their 5th and 14th Amendment rights. Procedural due process. Schools should develop a clear set of steps that are followed that allow students and parents a fair opportunity to address allegations that are being brought against the student. Due process of law. In the event of suspension or the necessity for law enforcement to become involved in the disciplinary action of a student, law enforcement shall comply with due process provisions as well. Substantive due process. To ensure fundamental fairness of all individuals, procedural and substantive requirements must be met when dealing with disciplinary issues of students. Substantive due process safeguards students against inconsistent or capricious discipline by school officials. There is a vagueness doctrine. Policies should be clearly written and communicated in order to avoid confusion and misunderstanding. The presumption standard says that students are presumed innocent unless factual evidence is presented and proves otherwise. The next topic is religion in public schools. There are 2 important amendments related to religion. The 14th Amendment focuses on the rights and privileges of all citizens of the United States. The First Amendment, Congress shall make no law supporting religion or prohibiting citizens from exercising their religious rights. So what's the connection between these 2? The 14th Amendment makes the First Amendment applicable to state action, which means that school officials may not infringe upon the rights of students by establishing religious practices in public schools. There are 2 essential clauses to the First Amendment. The first is the Establishment Clause, and it prohibits the state from passing laws that aid a religion or show preference for one religion over another. Then there's the Free Exercise Clause. It prohibits the state from interfering with individual religious freedoms. The combination of these 2 clauses requires state agencies to remain neutral in daily operations regarding religion. There are several controversial topics regarding religion in public schools: prayer, Bible reading, financial aid provided to parochial schools, religious symbols, displays, and banners, the use of school facilities for religious purposes, religious activities and holiday programs, curriculum topics such as intelligent design and theory of evolution, the distribution of religious materials, the Pledge of Allegiance, and religious freedoms involving teachers. All of these are considered controversial topics regarding religion in public schools. The next topic is freedom of expression. This amendment guarantees freedom of speech and expression to U.S. citizens, including public school students. That amendment, of course, being the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Students may not use this freedom, however, as a means of disrupting the educational process. Schools have the right to infringe upon a student's right to freedom of speech and expression if proven that these rights interfere with the operation of the school and/or the rights of others. And court decisions are usually made on a case-by-case basis. Protests and demonstrations are considered forms of free expression. They must remain peaceful. They cannot include disrespect to authority figures, destruction of property, violation of school rules, or unlawful acts. They cannot obstruct hallways or prevent movement of students from one place to another. And protests and demonstrations cannot be denied out of unsubstantiated fear of what might happen or the discomfort that it might cause. Censorship of student newspapers. School newspapers are used as a forum for students to express their ideas. Student editors must adhere to responsible journalism etiquette. Broad censorship by school officials violates freedom of speech rights of students. Exceptions to censorship would be those items that are vulgar or offensive in terms of race, religion, gender, etc., or include defamation of character or libel. Districts must follow a process in order for censorship to occur. First, a review process must take place. 2, an explanation must be given. 3, items must be censored and a rationale for censorship must be provided. And an opportunity for appeal must be given. The next topic is search and seizure. And search and seizure is covered under the 4th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. In regards to students, the biggest issue is determining whether or not a search is reasonable. In determining if a search is reasonable, administrators should have probable cause as to the violation of a law, school rule, or something that does affect the safety of others. There are 2 types of searches: school property versus student property. School property includes lockers and desks. Reliable information is needed that leads to the belief of violations. Districts should have clearly written policies detailing what will constitute a search. The second kind of search is student property, and it includes book bags, cars, pants, jacket pockets, things of that sort. Student property searches require stronger evidence because the search is more intrusive. Procedures to be followed. The student must be present. Officials should have a witness present. There should have been policies given out to parents and students at the beginning of the year that are outlined for searches. And if law enforcement is conducting the search, then a warrant is required. Individuals with disabilities. The first item here is IDEA, which stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This is a congressional act that outlines responsibilities of schools in regards to students with disabilities. It guarantees children ages 3 to 21 the right to a free and appropriate education. Section 504 involves students with a medical diagnosis that requires accommodations in the classroom. An IEP, also known as an individualized education plan. Students with disabilities have an individualized education plan, and this plan should include the following things: current educational progress, annual goals, both short and long term, specific educational services that are given, transitional services when age appropriate, a description of services and a time frame for implementation, discussion of progress toward previous goals. There should be input from the special ed teacher, the general education teacher, parents and guardians, and a school administrator when creating and revising a student's IEP. Another term is least restrictive environment, also known by the acronym LRE. The LRE is the environment in which the student will receive the most academic success while still meeting the needs of his or her disability. Students with disabilities should, whenever possible, be intermingled with their non-disabled peers. School officials cannot change a student's LRE without holding a review of the IEP. Discipline. When discipline is involved for students with disabilities, it must be determined whether or not the behavior was a manifestation of their disability. If so, the student may not be punished. If not, then the student may receive punishment that would be the equivalent to their non-disabled peers. When necessary, students may require the implementation of a behavior intervention plan, also known with the acronym BIP. Some disciplinary actions could require a reevaluation of the student's IEP if a change of placement or a change in the LRE is taking place. The last and final topic is liability and student records. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, also known as FERPA, is a law that protects students' confidentiality. It aims to ensure students' personal information remains private, and it requires parental consent or self-consent if the student is at least 18 years old for the release of information. Student records. Records should be kept in an organized manner, noting dates of updates or changes. Information regarding discipline should include all facts regarding the infraction. Gossip regarding information gained about a student should be avoided, as it is a violation of FERPA. And records should be kept in a safe and secure location and should require a signature documenting the date and reason in which the record was reviewed. So in conclusion, it's very important to remember that anytime you have a question about a controversial or questionable activity regarding these or any other educational topic, that it's important to consult your district's legal counsel if anyone is not sure of what to do in a given situation. The reason for doing so, of course, would be to avoid the possibility of litigation. And I've included a reference at the end of the presentation here. The textbook that we use for our course at JSU is titled School Law in Public Schools, a Practical Guide for Educational Leaders. Has some really good information in there on these topics as well as many others. And I have a copy of this in my office if you're interested, just let me know. All right, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I will be emailing out the link to the presentation shortly. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. If I do not know the answers, then I will gladly try to find them for you. Thanks again.